Okay, so we're diving into Good Energy by Dr. Casey Means.
Right.
And this book is claiming,
It's a big claim.
yeah, to unlock these secrets to limitless health
Right.
by connecting metabolism and well-being.
Yeah.
It sounds ambitious, right?
It does sound ambitious. And, looking at the sources that you've provided, it sounds like this might be a polarizing read.
Okay.
We have Johanna's very enthusiastic, glowing review on the Crunchy Convert blog.
Right.
But some Goodreads reviewers were less impressed, even raising concerns about potential for harm.
So our mission today is to help you decide if Good Energy deserves a place on your reading list.
Definitely.
We're going to analyze the writing, dissect the content, and compare it to similar books
Right.
to see if it truly delivers on its promises.
It's like a shortcut to deciding if this book is worth your precious time.
Love it. So let's start with the target audience.
Okay.
Who would benefit most from this book?
So based on Johanna's review, and just kind of the general tone of the book's description, Good Energy seems to be geared towards those who are new to holistic health
Okay.
and are looking for a broad overview.
Got it.
It covers a lot of ground.
Yeah.
From cellular function to the impact of our modern environment on health.
So kind of like Holistic Health 101.
Yes, precisely. And Dr. Means seems to take a more approachable style than some of the kind of denser health books out there.
Right.
Johanna even compared it favorably to Nourishing Traditions,
Okay.
which can be a bit overwhelming for beginners.
Yeah, I remember trying to tackle Nourishing Traditions.
Right.
It felt like I was reading an encyclopedia.
Exactly.
So Good Energy might be a gentler entry point,
It seems to be, yeah.
but what sets it apart from other introductory health books?
So one thing that stood out to me was Dr. Means' focus on explaining the why behind common health advice.
Okay.
So she delves into how our modern environment can damage our mitochondria,
Right.
those tiny powerhouses in our cells, responsible for energy production.
Wait, hold up.
Yeah.
Mitochondria. Remind me what those are.
Yeah, so imagine them as microscopic batteries that power every cell in your body.
Okay.
They convert nutrients into usable energy.
Uh-huh.
And when they're functioning optimally, we feel energized and healthy.
Gotcha. So she's saying our modern lifestyles are kind of messing with our energy production
Right.
at a cellular level.
Exactly. For example, she explains how chronic stress releases hormones that disrupt the mitochondria's ability to create energy efficiently.
Yeah.
And this resonates with a lot of people who are constantly feeling tired and burnt out.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say stress is bad,
Right.
but it's quite another to understand how it actually impacts us at a cellular level.
Yeah.
So she's really connecting the dots between the science and the symptoms.
It seems so, and that seems to be a major draw for readers like Johanna.
Okay.
It's not just about following advice blindly. It's
Right.
about understanding the underlying mechanism.
Okay, I'm starting to see why Johanna was so enthusiastic about Good Energy.
Yeah.
But what about the writing itself? Is it engaging, or is it kind of a dry scientific slog?
Johanna actually mentioned enjoying the audiobook while doing chores and running errands.
Okay.
So it seems like Dr. Means writes in a conversational,
Right.
relatable style that's easy to digest, even while multitasking.
That's encouraging.
Yeah.
I've encountered my fair share of health books that felt more like textbooks
Right.
than something you'd actually want to read for pleasure.
Right.
So,
And while Dr. Means does delve into some complex topics, she seems to do so in a way that's accessible to the average reader.
okay, so we've got approachable writing,
Right.
a broad overview of holistic health principles,
Yeah.
and some intriguing insights into cellular energy.
Hmm.
Sounds promising so far. But what about the actual advice she gives?
That's where things get a little more complex.
Okay.
While Dr. Means advocates for good energy foods, she also suggests a very strict plant-based diet
Okay.
and eliminates all grains.
Wait, really?
Even whole grains are off the table.
No whole grains. That seems a bit extreme.
It does.
I mean, I love my morning oatmeal.
Yeah.
And what about all those cultures that thrive on rice
Yeah.
or corn as staple foods?
That's a valid point.
Yeah.
And this is where some reviewers, even Johanna, started to push back.
Okay.
It feels like a one-size-fits-all approach,
Right.
which can be problematic when it comes to nutrition.
I agree. And honestly, it makes me a little wary.
Okay.
I'm all for healthy eating,
Uh-huh.
but I don't want to feel like I'm constantly restricting myself or demonizing certain foods.
It's understandable.
All about balance, right?
Exactly. And this brings us to another point of comparison. Dr. Means' approach seems to differ significantly from other popular health books like How Not to Die, by Dr. Michael Greger, or the longevity diet by Dr. Walter Longo.
Oh, I've heard of those.
Yeah.
Fill me in on how they compare.
Well, Dr. Greger emphasizes the power of a whole foods plant-based diet to prevent chronic diseases.
Okay.
And he provides a ton of evidence backing the benefits of fruits, vegetables, legumes, and yes, even whole grains.
That's interesting. So his approach seems more inclusive
Yes.
and less restrictive than Dr. Means's.
It does, and he focuses heavily on scientific research to support his claims.
Gotcha.
Then there's Dr. Longo,
Right.
who delves into the science of fasting
Okay.
and its potential to promote longevity and overall well-being.
Fasting. I've heard a lot about that lately.
It's become quite popular. And Dr. Longo has developed specific fasting protocols that have shown promising results in clinical trials.
Interesting.
So he takes a more targeted approach,
Okay.
focusing on the specific benefits of fasting,
Yeah.
rather than advocating for a complete dietary overhaul.
So it's like the longevity diet is a deep dive into one specific area of health,
Right.
whereas good energy aims to be more of a broad overview.
Exactly, and both approaches have their merits. It depends on what you're looking for
Yeah.
and where you are on your health journey.
Okay, so we've got a sense of the target audience, the writing style, some of the content, and how it compares to other popular health books.
Right,
But before we decide if good energy is worth the read,
right.
we need to address those potential red flags,
Definitely.
especially the concerns about conflicts of interest.
Yeah,
That's always a little suspicious.
right. Absolutely. Transparency is key when it comes to health advice,
All right.
especially when financial incentives are involved.
Exactly.
And that's something we'll delve into further in part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds intriguing. Can't wait to unpack that.
So welcome back to our deep dive into good energy.
All right, so last time we left off with some questions about Dr. Means's transparency,
Right.
particularly regarding potential conflicts of interest.
Yeah?
Some reviewers felt that her recommendations might be influenced by her financial ties to certain companies.
Right. And for example, she heavily promotes the use of continuous glucose monitors, or CGMs.
Yeah.
And those can be helpful for understanding blood sugar fluctuations, but Dr. Means doesn't clearly disclose that she's the founder of a company that manufactures CGMs.
Okay, that does seem a bit shady.
It does.
It makes you wonder if she's genuinely recommending them because they're beneficial,
Right.
or if it's a way to boost her own business.
Exactly. And it's not just the CGMs.
Right.
She also recommends a specific lab for blood work.
Okay.
And it turns out she's an investor in that company as well.
Wow, really? That's starting to feel less like coincidence and more like a pattern.
It does raise some red flags.
Yeah.
And while these connections don't necessarily invalidate her advice,
Right.
that lack of transparency is concerning.
It definitely makes me more skeptical.
Sure.
I want to trust that the author's recommendations are based on what's best for the reader, not their own financial gain.
It's about informed consent.
Right. Like if I'm going to invest in a CGM or choose a specific lab, I want to know if the author stands to profit from my decision.
Exactly. And this leads us to another point that several reviewers brought up.
Okay.
The potential for good energy to exacerbate disordered eating habits.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit earlier.
We did.
Some reviewers felt that the strict food rules and the good versus bad food lists could be problematic for those prone to orthorexia.
Precisely. And when we label foods as morally good or bad,
Right.
it creates a rigid framework that can lead to guilt, shame, and obsessive behaviors.
And for someone who's struggling with orthorexia, that can be incredibly damaging.
It can.
It's like their entire sense of self-worth becomes tied to their food choices.
Right. They might start to fear certain foods, restrict their intake excessively,
Yeah.
and develop an unhealthy preoccupation with clean eating.
I can see how that could easily spiral out of control.
It can.
It's important to remember that food is meant to nourish our bodies and bring us joy,
Yes.
not be a source of anxiety and guilt.
Well said. And while Dr. Means might not have intended to promote disordered eating,
Right.
the potential for harm is there, especially for vulnerable individuals.
That's a serious consideration.
It is.
It makes me wonder if there are other aspects of the book that might unintentionally reinforce those unhealthy patterns.
There are a few. For instance, she places a strong emphasis on personal responsibility for health. And while empowering on the surface,
Right.
this can backfire.
How so? I thought taking ownership of our health was a positive thing.
It is, to a point.
Okay.
But Dr. Means sometimes frames it in a way that suggests that we're solely responsible for our health outcomes,
Right.
regardless of external factors like genetics, socioeconomic conditions, or access to healthcare.
So it's like blaming the individual for circumstances beyond their control.
That's how some readers interpreted it.
Yeah.
And it can lead to a sense of shame and guilt if someone is struggling with a health issue, as if they're not trying hard enough or doing something wrong.
That's a really important point.
It is.
It's crucial to acknowledge those external factors and how they can impact our health,
Yeah.
even for making, healthy choices.
Exactly. And this ties back to our earlier discussion about Dr. Means' background.
Okay.
As an otolaryngologist,
Right.
her expertise lies in the ear, nose, and throat,
Yeah.
not necessarily in nutrition
Right.
or the complex interplay of factors that influence overall health.
Right. Her area of expertise isn't directly related to the advice she's giving in Good Energy.
Exactly. And while she clearly has a passion for holistic health and has done her research,
Yeah.
it's important to consider the limitations of her expertise.
So it's not about dismissing her entirely,
Right.
but about approaching her advice with a healthy dose of skepticism
Yes.
and doing our own research.
Yeah. It's about being critical thinkers and not blindly accepting any one person's perspective as gospel truth.
So we've uncovered some potential downsides to Good Energy.
Yeah.
Those conflicts of interest.
Yeah.
The risk of triggering disordered eating patterns.
Yeah.
And the potentially problematic framing of personal responsibility.
Right.
It's a lot to consider.
It is, and it's important to weigh these concerns against any potential benefits the book might offer.
One of the initial appeals was that Good Energy seemed like a good starting point for those new to holistic health.
Right.
But with all these caveats,
Yeah.
I'm not so sure anymore.
That's a fair point, and it brings us to the question of whether there are other introductory health books that might be more suitable or less problematic.
Ooh, I'd love to hear your suggestions. If Good Energy isn't the best place to start, where should we turn?
Okay, so we've spent a good amount of time kind of dissecting Good Energy,
Right.
exploring both its benefits and its downsides.
Yeah. But now I'm wondering, if this book isn't the ideal starting point for a holistic health journey, what are some better alternatives?
That's a great question, and it's important to remember that there's no one-size-fits-all answer.
Okay.
The best book for you will depend on your individual interests,
Right.
goals, and preferences.
That makes sense. So it's more about finding a book that resonates with us
Right.
and aligns with our values rather than blindly following any one expert's advice.
Exactly. And there are tons of fantastic resources out there covering various aspects of health and wellness.
Right.
Some might emphasize nutrition, while others might focus on stress management
Yeah.
or mindfulness.
So it's like creating a personalized health library, right?
Right.
Curating a collection of books that speak to our unique needs.
I love that analogy. And just like building any collection, it's about being selective and choosing pieces that truly resonate with you.
Okay, I'm on board with this health library concept,
Good.
but I'm still feeling a bit overwhelmed. Like, where do we even begin?
Well, let's start by revisiting some of the concerns that we had with Good Energy
Okay.
and see if we can find alternative books that address those issues.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
One of my biggest hesitations with Good Energy was the potential for Dr. Means' approach to disordered eating.
Yeah.
Are there books that promote a more balanced and intuitive approach to nutrition?
Absolutely. One book that comes to mind is Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch.
Okay.
It's a classic in the field, and it encourages a gentle, non-restrictive approach to food and body image.
That sounds right up my alley. I'm all
Yeah.
about ditching the diet mentality
Right.
and developing a healthier relationship with food.
Another option is The Body Ecology Diet by Donna Gates.
Okay.
It focuses on restoring gut health,
Uh-huh.
which is crucial for overall well-being, and offers a more flexible and individualized approach to nutrition than Dr. Means' strict plant-based recommendations.
Okay, so we've got some options for those seeking a more balanced and gut-friendly approach to eating. What about the concern that Dr. Means might be overemphasizing personal responsibility
Yeah.
and downplaying the role of external factors?
That's a crucial point, and it highlights the need for a more nuanced perspective.
Right.
One book that comes to mind is The Blue Zones by Dan Buettner.
Oh, I've heard of that one.
Yeah.
Those are like the longevity hotspots.
Exactly. And Buettner delves into the lifestyle factors that contribute to their exceptional health and longevity,
Okay.
including social connections, community support,
Ah.
and a sense of purpose.
It goes beyond individual choices
It does.
and examines the broader environmental and cultural influences on well-being.
Exactly.
That sounds incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
It reminds us that health isn't just about what we eat or how much we exercise.
Right.
It's also about, our social connections, our
Yeah.
environment,
Yeah.
our sense of belonging.
Right. And for those interested in understanding the science of longevity in more depth,
Okay.
Lifespan by Dr. David Sinclair is an excellent choice.
I've heard great things about that one.
Yeah.
Doesn't it delve into the latest research on aging
It does.
and the potential for extending our lifespan?
It does. Dr. Sinclair is a leading researcher in the field,
Okay.
and he presents a compelling case for the possibility of slowing down and even reversing the aging process.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So we've got options for those seeking a balanced approach to nutrition, a broader perspective on the factors that influence longevity,
Yeah.
and even a deep dive into the cutting-edge science of aging.
And remember, this is just a starting point.
Right.
There are countless other amazing books out there waiting to be discovered.
It's like we're embarking on a grand adventure, right?
Right.
Through the world of health and wellness,
Yeah.
collecting wisdom and insights along the way.
Exactly. And the most important thing is to approach this journey with curiosity,
Right.
an open mind, and a willingness to experiment and find what works best for you.
So while good energy might have sparked this conversation, it's ultimately up to us to curate our own personalized approach to health.
Yeah.
It's about empowering ourselves to be the architects of our own well-being.
Well said. And remember, the most rewarding journeys are often those we chart ourselves.
That's the perfect note to end on.
It is.
Thanks for guiding us through this deep dive. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Happy reading, everyone.